Hey guys, welcome to Reform Nerd. Today we're going to be talking about Masters of the Universe. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you have already seen a lot of the bad reviews that this anime or cartoon has gotten online. There's a lot of people that are mad about the direction that they've chosen to take this show in. And before we start, I do want to give you a spoiler alert, because we are going to be talking about the first episode of the Masters of the Universe Revelation. And this is a new show on Netflix for those of you that don't know. When it comes to this show, it's based off of the original Masters of the Universe with He-Man back in the 1980s or 90s, I believe. And it's your typical good versus evil story, right? And to not give you an entire recap of everything that happens in the first episode, you just need to know is that it's a battle between the good guys and the bad guys. And we get to a point where we're in the final battle of this episode. And what happens is that the evil guy, Skeletor, essentially takes his staff and he hits this orb. It's more or less like a source of magic for not only the land that they live in or the world that they live in, but we're told that this holds the magic for the entire universe. So needless to say, this is bad news, right? Obviously, you're not going to end the first episode with everyone dying. So what happens is that the main character, He-Man, who used to be the main character of the series, who we know as He-Man, he essentially sacrifices himself to save not only his friends, his enemies as well, but above all, the entire universe. So that's what pretty much happens here in this first episode. And what I want to get into is the last few scenes of this first episode. And this is when Man-at-Arms, who is one of the companions of He-Man, has to tell the king and everyone else that's in the room that He-Man has died. The thing about this is that He-Man is also Adam. Now, Adam is the son of the king and queen, and also is the best friend of this woman called Teela in the show. So Man-at-Arms has to tell everyone that He-Man / Adam has officially died, right? And this does not go over well. The king is irate and he just blows up. But the scene that I want to focus on is with Teela. Now, Teela is shocked. She is in disbelief. She feels anger. She feels like she has been betrayed because everyone around her knew that Adam was He-Man except for her. So she feels betrayed, and we see this crazy scene, and I'll just play a little bit for you.
I am done with every one of you.
Teela!
You knew, didn't you? And you never said anything, not even to him. I have laid my life on the line for every one of you, but you're all a pack of liars. And Adam was no different. I've had enough. Enough of your secrets and lies. Enough of magic and the monsters it makes. Enough of the royal palace. And enough of Castle Grayskull to last me a lifetime. I'm done looking out for the people who never told me the truth. He-Man is gone. Skeletor is gone. And now?
So what we see here is that Teela just forgets about Adam, she forgets about He-Man, and she just focuses all on herself, how people have betrayed her, how people have been lying to her her entire life, and she just chooses to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as people would say. She just gives up on everything. She's just like, I'm done with all of this, I'm done with magic, and she's like, boom, gone. And that's pretty much the end of the first episode. For me personally, I didn't like how they had this character who potentially becomes like somewhat of a main character for the rest of the season, be so emotional, be so irrational, and above all, really self-centered, because if we look at her monologue, she really just focuses on me, how life was unfair to me, how all of this was unfair to me. But yet, like, we've forgotten, or she has forgotten, the fact that, dude, your best friend just died. He sacrificed himself to save you and everybody else. Like, I get that she would be angry and sad as well, but to take it to the point where you just make it all about yourself, I just felt that they did that character like super dirty. She just came off really self-centered. And that's what I want to focus on with you guys today. How us as humans, a lot of the times, do tend to be very self-centered. And I think even those of us that, struggle with this or have to an extent overcome those selfish behaviors, I think that there are always times in our lives, especially when things come in that are unexpected, where that selfishness comes out. And I think that that's just in part of our nature, that us as humans, we tend to be selfish, right? And what this reminds me of is a story in the Old Testament when it comes to Saul. Now, for those of you that don't know, Saul is the first ever person to be crowned king of the people of Israel. So what happens is that Israel essentially tells God, hey God, we are tired of you just ruling us yourself. We want a king like all of the other nations that are around us. And God is like, you know what? Fine, I'll give you this king, but get ready for the consequences of these actions. Because now you've essentially told God, hey God, you're not good enough. We want a man to also rule us. So this is how Saul comes into power. We learn a few things when Saul is first crowned as king. A little bit before that, we're told that he is taller than most of the men at that time, and he's also good looking, so he makes for a good picture of a king. So Saul is crowned king, and we see that he reigns for a while, and it seems like he is faithful to God. But then comes a time where Israel is being attacked, and specifically by a giant that I think we're all familiar with, called Goliath. And in comes David in the picture. And I think that most of us are familiar with the story of David and Goliath. So what ends up happening is that David conquers Goliath with a rock, right? And it's not just with the rock, right? Because we know that God is with him. That's ultimately the reason why he's able to conquer Goliath. So David conquers Goliath, and he ends up joining the army of Saul. And needless to say that David remains faithful to God during this time, and he is also attributed a lot of victories. So David is becoming very popular amongst the people of Israel. So this gets back to Saul, and Saul starts to get nervous. He starts becoming jealous because the people of Israel are praising him, and they're also praising Saul, but not as much, right? So at this time, we're seeing that Saul is becoming a little bit bitter. He's starting to become concerned about David. So here's where we start seeing that Saul is losing some of his focus. He starts focusing more on preserving his kingdom, of preserving the things that have been given to him by God, instead of focusing on the God that got him there. So not to not make the entire story of Saul too long, I mean, you guys should definitely read it. I mean, it's just crazy how this guy just like falls off the rails. Essentially what ends up happening is that Saul spends a good part of his life persecuting David because he is afraid that he's going to one day take over the throne. What ultimately happens to Saul is that he is injured in battle, and ultimately he ends up taking his own life. Saul's story is a cautionary tale for us all. It really helps us understand, and it shows us what happens when we lose our focus, when we let things like fear, anger, sadness, jealousy, covetousness, the wanting of materialistic things, money, when we let all of this take us away from the true focus that we should be having, which is Christ. And ultimately, that was the downfall of Saul. He started focusing on all of these other things instead of focusing on the person, on the being that got him there in the first place, which was God. Hey guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it helpful. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please leave those below. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Share this channel with as many people as you know so we can continue to grow, and that will help me continue to make content right for you. And if you have any suggestions of anything that you would like to see from me, please also comment those below. If you're not done with listening to me, here are a few videos that you can also check out that I also have on my channel. I hope that this was a blessing, and as always, remember, we must persevere.